Okay, today we are going to be doing a first look video at the Decent Espresso machine. Thank you guys so much for showing your enthusiasm during the unboxing. It was really fun to share that exciting experience with you guys, and your enthusiasm really made me feel like I made the right choice about what next machine to get. So this video, like I said, is going to be a first look. It's not the full review, but we're going to dive into the functionalities of this machine, dive into the tablet, dive into the diagnostics, talk a bit more about why I got it, and of course talk about my first month of ownership with this machine. What has it been like? So you might notice that I have another tablet off to the side here. This one is not actually plugged in. It's going to be just for show. I have this tablet over here so I can easily touch and tap, and I have a screen recording going here so I can show it somewhere. I don't know if I'm going to do this side or this side, but I can show you a nice clear image instead of you trying to peer onto the screen on the camera. So let's dive in. The first thing that I want to talk about is the new scales that I got, because this has gravimetric dosing. This has the ability to weigh your shots and adapt accordingly. So I finally picked up an Akaya Lunar, and it happens to just fit perfectly into this aftermarket drip tray that I was very kindly given by one of the Decent Basecamp members, Ewan. So Ewan, thank you very much for sending me these. If you own a Decent Espresso machine and you would like to check these out, I will leave them linked down below. But the reason to use this aftermarket drip tray, besides it just being matte black and awesome, is that it fits the Akaya Lunar absolutely perfectly. That's a pretty slick setup. The other thing that I've noticed in my first month of usage is that it's really nice to have these elevated legs. It allows you to place a scale under the front lip here. So I have another scale that I use for just weighing out my doses. That slides all the way in there. That's a pretty slick look. It looks like a little scale on a drawer. So I'm very happy with that. The next thing I want to talk about is the capacity of this machine. I got this right before Christmas, so I was able to put it through the ringer with a bunch of guests at my house. And let's just say the fact that this is not a dual boiler didn't come up. It wasn't a concern at any point. The fact that you can press one button and the shot will pull itself sort of offsets the fact that you cannot brew and steam at the same time. While the shot is pulling, you can trust it to stop at the right weight or the right volume, and you can be weighing out the next dose, grinding, cleaning up, that kind of stuff. So it doesn't really affect the workflow at all. Not to mention that the steaming on this, the performance was actually quite surprising. The videos I've seen have kind of put this as a bit of a slow steamer, but I think they recently upped the flow rate on the steaming. Yes, they increased the flow rate because it is adjustable. Let's take a look. If we go into the steam section on this app, you can see that there's a little slider on the bottom here. And as you can see, it is adjusting the flow rate max. So we can go all the way up to 2.5 milliliters per second. And that's not gonna mean much. That doesn't mean really anything for me. But what this results in is me being able to steam about 200 milliliters of milk in about 25 seconds, which is no slouch in the steaming department. However, what caught me off guard about the steaming was how dry the steam is. Immediately in the first few drinks that I steamed on this, the milk quality was just so silky. There was no water being introduced by the steam arm. It kind of caught me off guard. I've heard some people talk about this. I didn't really buy into it a whole lot until I experienced it myself. It was really, really impressive. The other thing that is interesting is going back to a single hole steam arm. I was a little concerned, but it's actually been nice. It adds an element of control. And I haven't been steaming at the max flow rate either. I've actually been dialing it down slightly, trying to take advantage of that very dry steam, take advantage of a single hole tip, and a slightly slower steaming rate, and I have been getting the best quality steamed milk I've gotten out of any machine. So, a pretty high endorsement for the steaming after 1 month of ownership. It was one of the things I was most concerned about, and has turned into one of the things that I've been most impressed with. Okay, I think that's enough talking about that. Let's actually dive into the espresso performance. So, looking at this espresso screen here, we can see that it's giving us a few charts. But right now, they're just target curves. So I think the best thing to do would be to pull a shot, see how it reacts, and then talk about the data that it draws. So quickly before I actually pull this shot, I guess I should talk about some of the profiles and what profile I'm going to be using. Baked into this machine, there are a lot of different profiles. Some of them are pressure-based, some of them are flow-based, but they all do something slightly different. But the best way to explain this is to show you some normal profiles. So, for example, an E61 espresso machine. This is what an E61 espresso machine would do. It will slowly ramp up, or not too slowly, but it will ramp up to 9 bar as the group head fills, and then it will hold 9 bars for the duration of the shot. So we can see there is not much of a pre-infusion. It will naturally rise and hold up to 9 bar. Now, something like a lever machine will be slightly different. It will have a lower pressure pre-infusion, again, as that cavity fills, and then it will rise up to a specific temperature. And then as the spring releases, the pressure will drop as the shot progresses. So again, this machine, the Decent, can replicate that. I think that's one of the coolest parts of this machine. It is very much a test bench. It can effectively act like any of your favorite espresso machines all in one. For example, a fairly popular lever machine, or a Londinium machine, or simply a machine with the pressure turned down to 6 bar, a more gentle pressure. You can do all of these at the push of a button instead of lifting off the lid and diving in, or buying separate machines, separate lever machines, separate spring-driven machines. So I've been using this in a specific profile. I'm going to use the default profile, which is sort of like a lever profile for this shot, just to demonstrate. So it's not actually dialed in for this profile, so we'll see how it goes. But again, this is just a demonstration. So the other thing, as we dive into the settings here, we can see that I can put a stop at weight. So I'm stopping at 40 grams. It is checking with the scale, as we're going to see, and it will stop the shot at exactly 40 grams. If I didn't have a scale plugged in, we could do that volumetrically. We could say stop at probably 60 milliliters, because the puck is going to absorb some. So, and we can also decide at what point the machine starts tracking that water volume, immediately including the pre-infusion, or if it was a different profile with different stages, we could say start tracking water only after the pre-infusion, which is slightly more accurate. Okay, so I'll put my cup on. The Akaya, being the Akaya, is going to automatically tear itself, and then I can simply press go. And we're gonna start seeing these charts populate in real time as this shot pulls. So we can see a flow rate of 4 milliliters per second going in. And now the pressure is slowly rising, which is the green line. And then the brown line comes in, which is the espresso going into the cup. So we can see the pressure has stopped at 9 bar. And then the brown line and the blue line are meeting and going up as the shot progresses. We can also see that the weight is updating in real time, and it is stopping. It stops ahead of time, so we get as close as possible to 40 grams, which is pretty gosh darn impressive. So we got 39.7 grams. So that's been extremely impressive. It is clearly doing some kind of pre-calculation based on the current flow rate into the cup and what your target is to stop it ahead of time and get that right dose in the cup. So here is our first shot on the channel. Let's dive into it. So as we look here, we can see what went on in our shot. We had a constant flow rate of 4 milliliters per second going into the puck to pre-infuse. Then, as that puck started to resist, we saw the pressure rising. It rose all the way up to 9 bar. And then because this is the default profile that programmed in a slight pressure decline, we could see that happening. But as the puck is degrading, we can see that the flow rate and the flow rate out of the puck is ramping up slightly. And these are the type of behaviors that's really interesting to analyze with the Decent. Because what you start to realize is that espresso is largely driven by flow. Flow is such a huge impactor to the flavor of your final shot. And different beans are going to require different things out of the flow, different treatments. So if you have a very dark roast or a very light roast, it doesn't make sense to treat those in the same way in terms of flow. They're not only different in the way that they give up their soluble materials, the way that they extract, but they're also different in the way that the puck integrity holds together. Lighter roasts are known to degrade far more rapidly, and therefore using a pressure decline towards the end of the shot can be highly beneficial. Things like darker roasts tend to do better, and that's probably why traditional machines are simply a flat 9 bar. They react well to darker roasts, they have a high puck integrity, and they can withstand that straight 9 bar pressure for a good long period of time. But as we start to venture into specialty coffee, you start to realize that treating different roasts, different beans, and different recipes in different ways makes a whole lot of sense. I actually just had a great conversation with John Buckman on Instagram a couple nights ago, and he was talking about how decent owners tend to kind of use their own lingo. And it's not from a place of snobbery, it's not from a place of thinking they're better, but it's simply a way that they can speak about their shots and the things that they're trying that other machines simply can't. I pre-infused at 4 milliliters per second until the pressure got to 4 bar, and then I ramped up. And then I set a flow limit of 5 milliliters per second, things like this that we can't even begin to fathom on normal things like E61 machines or a Gadget Classic Pro, but you can start to see when you have this level of data. Okay, that's enough kind of nerding out over this one shot. Let's dive into some of the other things that are involved here. So if we don't go into the settings, we can go back to the presets. And we have a few of the presets that I've kind of put as, I guess, my favorites. But if we click this eyeball, we can see that there are a whole lot of presets built into this machine. Different machines, E61s, just different profiles for different kinds of beans, classic Italian espressos, a low pressure lever machine. All these things are programmed in, but of course, you can go in and create your own profiles. That's a big part of this. There's a big community built around this, sharing the profiles and learning. Another interesting thing that I quickly want to touch on very quickly is you're going to notice some tea profiles in here. So if I add in a black tea profile, let's take a look at what that looks like. So a black tea profile is actually doing a series of portafilter fillings and then flushes. And it doesn't use a standard portafilter. It uses a specific portafilter like this, where it will be completely sealed off until a certain pressure is reached, which will allow it to then flush out the contents of the portafilter. And does this for a specific reason in that it can use fresh water for each micro brew and get a more even extraction, which is always kind of the name of the game. So if you're into tea, this is somewhat interesting. But we'll touch on that in a later video. Okay, quickly running through the basic interface. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place. This is a very unscripted video, but quickly going through the actual user interface here. We have a few buttons along the top in its basic form. We have a flush button, which is a little bit pointless because if you click flush, all it's going to tell you is where the flush button is on the group head. So not really sure why that is included. Maybe someone can fill me in. Then there's the Espresso tab, which we've been looking at so far. Maybe I'll move this away from a tea profile. So this is the Espresso profile. It's going to tell you what you currently have queued up. It's going to give you a preview of what that profile looks like, or it will show you the stats from your previous shot if you have pulled one. Next, we've already seen the steaming screen, but let's dive into it a bit more. We again have that steam slider along the bottom. But we also have an auto off timer. If you are the type of person who likes to do hands-free steaming, you can really dial that in. You could set your steam arm up in the perfect position and then determine exactly how long it needs to steam for to reach that perfect temperature, program it in, and let it run. Finally, something that will interest Americano drinkers is that the hot water spout on this is also completely programmable. So you can choose a volume, which is not out of the ordinary, but you can also choose an exact temperature for that water to be coming out at. This machine is very accurate in terms of its cold and warm water mixing, so you'll be able to jump from a 65-degree temperature for your water for your Americano back up to a normal brewing temperature in real time. Quickly talking about brewing temperature, you might notice that in some of these recipes, the temperature is lower than you might expect. For example, in this one, it's sitting at 89 degrees Celsius. And the reason for that is because the Decent machines measure temperature right at the puck, in the group head at the puck. So you're getting a true coffee temperature and not a boiler temperature, not a water temperature somewhere along the path. You're getting a temperature at the puck. And for that reason, temperatures are talked about slightly differently in the world of Decent. Diving further into the settings, so if we hit this settings cog in the bottom here, we now can again select which preset we want or dive into the settings for that preset. So this is V3 of Damien's Londinium profile, and you can see it's pretty darn complicated, but each step has its own set of parameters. I'll quickly scroll through them and you can pause if you want to read them, but there's a lot of stuff going on here. So there's a fill stage, there's then an infusion, it then rises the pressure up, holds at 9 bar, declines the pressure back down if needed, holds at 5 bar if needed, and then if it passes that, it gets to a flow limit. So you hear me saying if needed. A lot of shots might not get to these later stages depending on how the puck is resisting the water flow. If you get severe channeling, a lot of these later stages are meant to mitigate that, but it might not reach that. Or if you're using a particularly light roast, they might reach that. Now, Londinium is not meant for light roasts, but it's just demonstrating that different puck preps or different beans might reach these later stages and need these kind of flow limiting mitigations, where other beans might just exist in these first 4 or 5 steps. Again, it's a different language. It's really cool. Okay, going on to the next tab, we have some just general information about the machine. You can see that it is counting the number of espressos, steam cycles, hot water, which is good if you're in a commercial setting. No, I have not only pulled 35 shots. This is, again, just a separate tablet off to the side. I've been using the main one on the machine. Other things that you're gonna see the version of the software, some basic settings like energy saver or programming on in this keep hot button. We also have some maintenance tabs, some calibration settings. So if your flow is off, it's not running to the accurate flow rate, you can recalibrate it very easily. Firmware updates, and then an interesting thing is the water level. So not only will it show you a milliliter perfect water level, but you can also set what level it will give you a warning of low water at. So if you regularly make Americanos, you might want to have this set much higher. If you only make very short espressos, you can probably have this set pretty close to empty. A nice touch. And no, you don't have to go to this settings screen to monitor your water level. Any of the screens will actually show a little blue tab along the side, whether it's the flush screen, the espresso screen, the steam screen, or the water screen. You can always see your water level in real time, which is really cool. Finally, we have the app tab, where again, you'll get software updates. You can set general app settings like the app brightness, and you connect the tablet to the Decent espresso machine. You'll also see the Akaya scale in there. So if you're connecting a scale, it is very easy. You can just search and add it in. It took me 5 seconds. Finally, there are a few other settings like the skins. You might have seen other people using things like the DSX skin. We can definitely dive into that later on. For now, I have just been using the very basic Insight skin. Okay. I think that's it for the overview of the app. So I want to quickly touch on which profiles I have been using and why, and then maybe wrap this up with some general opinions of my first month with this machine. So when I got this machine, I pictured myself making a few profiles because I was really curious and I could really see the benefits of creating a good pre-infusion that made sure to saturate the puck before ramping up to pressure, and then controlling the flow if the puck started to degrade prematurely. And what I'm describing is pretty much exactly this Londinium V3 that I'm seeing right on the screen here. It has an intelligent pre-infusion that kind of makes sure that the puck is pre-wet properly, then it ramps up, and then if the puck starts to degrade prematurely, it will then start to ramp down. So that one was already kind of done for me. So I've been playing with this Londinium. It's given some great results with medium roast. It tastes great in lattes. It kind of gives a really good texture. But for drinking straight, I had some other ideas. And once again, I found it was kind of already created. And that is this adaptive profile. If you currently own a decent espresso machine and you have not tried the adaptive profile, I highly, highly recommend it. Again, this is for more medium roast. It actually says it in the name of the profile. But what this does is similar to the Londinium, but it actually adds an active adaptive element. So it will pre-infuse at a specific flow rate, then it will hold that pre-infusion at a specific pressure and just kind of infuse the puck. You might see a few drips coming out, and then it will ramp to full pressure. But you can see this spike drop off, and that's not the pressure dropping down, but it's switching to a flow limited state. So once it hits full pressure, which is around 11 bar, it takes note. It takes note at 11 bar, after pre-infusion, the puck is at this flow rate. And then it will determine and will actively adapt the flow rate based on what flow it is at 11 bar. So if the flow is above a certain level, it will just hold it flat. If it is below a certain level, which I believe is around the 2 milliliters per second mark, if it is below that, it will slowly ramp up the flow through the remainder of the shot. And this has given some really, really good results. It gives a slightly more complex shot than the Londinium, I find. I've been using Londinium for my milk-based drinks. And this one, if I'm drinking a slightly medium roast straight, this is what I've been using, and I've been really, really impressed. So if you own a decent machine and you haven't checked this out, absolutely do that. One final thing I want to note, after we pulled the shot, you might have noticed that it was saying shot uploading. What on earth does that mean? Let me show you. In my browser here, I am on visualizer.coffee/shots, and I have an account on here. And every time I pull a shot on the Decent Espresso machine, it automatically updates, it uploads that shot information to this website. But what we can see here is a few of the shots that I've recently pulled. Not all of them, but a few of them. So, for example, if we go on January 11th, and I click the eyeball, we can see my shot. And this shot was pulled with that adaptive profile. And this was a very good shot. I remember this. And I could add notes to this shot if I really wanted to. However, it flowed very, very well. It peaked up at around 10 bar. It took note of where the flow rate was at, and it slowly ramped up. And the puck did not degrade in any kind of a messy way. It kind of just held that pressure. This was a really good shot. The other thing that you can do is you can compare it to other shots. So if I go back down to my other shot on that day, we can see that the second shot that I just added in had a very similar flow rate. The blue lines are very close to one another, but in order to achieve that flow rate, the pressure dropped right around 35 seconds. It was a very different pressure on that puck. It went from 10 bar down to about 7.5 bar. So that was really interesting, and it resulted in a slightly different tasting shot. Now, the beauty of the adaptive profile is that it saw that change and it adapted accordingly. It was a flow limited shot, so as that puck degrades, it didn't flow everywhere and channel all over my machine. But it's really interesting to see this kind of data. These are the kind of things that we're going to be diving into in future videos. Okay. So, this was a lot of information. I hope it was interesting for you guys. We're not going to be geeking out this much on every single video that involves the Decent. We're going to be using it as a tool for some more simple concepts, but if you are interested, we're going to dive pretty deep into some cool espresso concepts. I can hear a lot of Decent fans screaming at their screen, Matt, the Rayo Alonghe, blooming espresso, yes. Those are for lighter roasts. That is a conversation for another day, and to be quite honest, I've only done a few shots with those profiles on a few different beans, so I'm still getting used to it. I can tell you it is quite impressive. I have never had shots of espresso with light roasts that taste quite like that. but that's for a different video. We will get into it. So I hope that you guys, again, enjoyed this quick look at the Decent DE1Pro, the first month with this machine. In case you can't tell, I've been really enjoying it and I cannot see getting rid of this anytime soon. So stay tuned for lots more content with this machine and lots more content on the channel. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.